time to get geeked up.
But yeah, like we were saying, this is the big new Will Ferrell movie. Leslie, for us, it fell onto Netflix. Liam and I are both Will Ferrell fans. You've heard us talk about him on the show, about how we are fans of him. And,
yeah, I mean, really just a pretty legendary comedy figure. I think we even, I talked about or joked around about during our Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavor, celebrity ice cream flavor breakdown.
Yes,
but probably the Anchorman, probably the best, comedy, franchise, comedy character franchise of the 2000s,
For sure. I mean, that was a huge one. And then there was the sequel, which wasn't so great. But, I mean, it is a character that is kind of franchise because now Will Ferrell does have a podcast of his own out there as Ron Burgundy.
Okay, Burgundy that's true. He's never dropped that character. That's a good point. That one is like...
Yeah. I mean, really, it seems that, the Ron Burgundy character really reminds me of the Goulet when he was on SNL.
Okay,
where he would play Robert Goulet. I mean, it really feels like that's where the Burgundy character stemmed from. You know what I mean? Because Will Ferrell's been around for quite some time now. He was the... obviously, we're huge Sandler fans on the show, but I think he was, after that whole cast got fired, and then they brought in this new cast, and it was kind of I remember hearing stories of, SNL, behind-the-scenes thing talk about, but it was they fired all, these kind of stand-up kind of personas and writers, like the Sandlers and Chris Rocks, and then they hired, a bunch of improv people.
Okay,
which have been,
interesting.
Farrell's, Jerry O'Terry, Molly Shannon.
Even maybe Chris Kattan, where I know
sure.
Ferrell and Chris Kattan were in the Groundlings before SNL together, and they I guess came up with the Roxbury sketch. They had that together before SNL. But you're right, he kind of just missed crossing over. I think maybe Daryl Hannah and Tim Meadows were the only assholes that stuck with to the end. But
Norm Macdonald too,
Okay, Norm might have Norm crossed over, I guess.
On, the Sandler days, the end of the Sandler days, but then when he really took over Weekend Update and shit was the Will Ferrell.
Yes, was part of it. Yeah, like you said, the new class. And that's kind of one of the things that happens with SNL. I mean, of course, that class was so epic where they had, just so many big stars that there's going to be a big lag, but it always feels like SNL, it's the glory days are over, and I feel like that Will Ferrell class, especially when he came, really kind of defined who are these shitheads, when you know what I mean, you just such a fall from grace from having Farley, Carvey, Mike Myers, just the epic names of comedy, and then all of a sudden it took a couple years, but Will Ferrell within a couple years was just an absolute Hall of Fame cast member. Literally he was in some episodes, it felt like every sketch, and was hilarious, just some all-time SNL characters.
Yeah, you quickly realize the guy could do anything. He started off, I think the first thing everyone remembers him from is the Spartan Cheerleaders, I think was his first big thing. And then the Night of Roxbury was
and then he was also in the keyboard. Him and Molly Shannon were the church keyboard fucking team. That was hilarious. So he had a lot of the definitive SNL sketch characters of the era, but as well then he had the Trebek and the Harry Carey, and just you never knew what you were getting into. And then as well, he was probably he might honestly go down as well as the all-time best straight man in a cast. If you could have put him as the straight man with the Farleys and those guys, it would have been just over the top. Amazing. One of my all-time favorite Ferrell's reoccurring sketches as well was the him and Rachel Dratch Lavas. Would you like to eat some salted cured meat, my lover?
Ran down on chests. Yeah. That was one that would always break. There's a Will Ferrell commercial that we still from SNL, one of the fake commercials that I still quote around my place constantly. It's the one where he's doing the dog food commercial or the dog training commercial, and he's and the dogs were. React best to sarcasm, and it's fucking just him talking shit, all serious to these dogs.
Yeah. He's oh no, that was a great idea to shit on my rug. Yeah, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Humphrey. Yeah. No, Humphrey, please don't get up. I forgot you worked 8 hours today. It's,
but I guess we'll get into the breakdown as we'll continue on, because like we said, really just really established him, and especially in that class where it was him and a lot of duds, let's be honest, Catans and your Rachel Dratches, they're funny, great sketch comedy kind of characters, but we have a major lack on like iconic comedy figures from that SNL era. All right,
Absolutely.
but he, I guess, kind of, like I said, started SNL in '95, and then throughout the 2000s was really a hero on SNL, but getting some movie play where he was in Austin Powers as a little character. Of course, The Night at the Roxbury kind of franchise movie came out. He was in The Ladies' Man,
yes.
a great. Did you like Roxbury? I never saw that one just because I hated the sketch, and we were in high school, so I still looked down at my nose at seeing that. But
no, man, that's one of those movies I would definitely like back when we would get stoned and watch. Some of those lines in there are fucking classic in that movie, dude.
All right, good to know.
Definitely check it out.
But The Ladies' Man, where he was like the a Greco-Roman wrestler, fucking husband of Tim Meadows. And we've talked about it before, but one of the all-time underrated movies in movie history is The Ladies' Man.
Yeah. For sure. I would put that up there with like you said, Night at the Roxbury. Like it's kind of a sleeper.
Okay.
Like,
Definitely, I would say, very much of a sleeper, yeah. But and again, from that like back half of the cast, because Tim Meadows really overshadowed in the first part of the '90s, as he was literally like the whole '90s. But so we're getting into the 2000s, and as well at this point, I would say Will Ferrell. So he's been in some good movies, good kind of side character roles, great SNL characters as well, like an absolute home run if he's ever on Conan or any he really at this point was like one of my favorite late night guests. Or anything with him at this point, but not like a huge movie star yet. Okay,
yeah,
I would say for him.
Too.
What's up?
I was going to mention that too. That like anytime he was on a late night show, he would always come on as like some goofy character, be it like Little Debbie or Goulet.
We all remember when he was on Conan, dressed up as like the sexy leprechaun or whatever the fuck, But I'd say his real breakout, and again, still kind of a side role, but real breakout performance in Zoolander as Mugatu. And Zoolander was such like an epic smash that I feel like really kind of propelled him. And then I'd say really the big career began. If correct me if I'm wrong, but I was going to go Old School in 2003.
Correct. Yeah, I would have said the Old School was kind of his breakout role too, just because he is playing a character, but it's like the most normal. Frank the Tank is the most normal character he's played up to at this point.
No, absolutely. I mean? Honestly, one of the most normal characters he's ever played, as we'll get into. But he, but he really was like the runaway comedic smash of that movie, and that movie was like one of the all-time comedies of the 2000s. So major props. But so really, that's probably more his breakout. You're right, than Zoolander. But I feel like so I guess if you just want to take it to Zoolander in 2001, up to this point, he's like a real prospect as a character, comedic actor. Great side, great smaller roles, great SNL appearances, but not that huge star. All right, Old School was 2003. From there, we have a stretch of pretty epic 2000 movies, but we go Old School, Elf. All right, Anchorman, which we've talked about as his kind of definitive thing. Then he did Bewitched, which was kind of a swing and a miss, but like at the time a big epic remake. Then he did the trilogy of sports comedy bloopers from 2006 to 2008. He was Talladega Nights, Blades of Glory, and Semi-Pro. Okay, so back-to-back movies, a race car driver, an ice skater, and a basketball player.
I'll say it right now, my like all-time favorite. Like most people will say Ron Burgundy, Anchorman. My all-time favorite Will Ferrell movie,
Talladega Nights.
He's never topped his Talladega Nights, man. It's,
I mean, that was, I guess, the first. Was that the first him and John C. Reilly collab?
Yeah, yes, it was.
Collab as well, and that was really as well. Sacha Baron Cohen.
Sacha Baron Cohen was in it. Just the thing with the kids being little assholes. The whole fucking movie, dude, is a home run to me.
It really is.
Anchorman, you watch it and it kind of gets you after a while. It's like, all right, but I don't know, Ricky Bobby, if that movie came on right now, I know what I'm watching.
Yeah, we can kind of double back and talk a little bit about Anchorman and some of our reaction after. I'll quickly try to run through the whole thing. But you're right, man, a lot of these character things, and we'll talk about it, I guess, with Eurovision especially, but sometimes the characters need to kind of settle on you. You need to think about it as you're watching it. It's not quite as funny as it is in the aftermath, But I guess the last of them was Semi-Pro as well, of like the hilarious athlete movies, okay? Then as well in 2000, 2008, he did Step Brothers, which was a huge smash and fucking really funny movie. So between 04 and 08, between Anchorman and Step Brothers, he's really emerged as like the biggest comedy star going in the 2000s. Then 2009, he did as well that George W. Bush special, where as well he was trapped in that character. And I actually saw that live. Me and my brother went and saw that live on Broadway.
Oh, did you? That's awesome.
Yeah, it was real cool. And that was a big reoccurring thing at the time for him for a couple years. Then he kind of gets into throughout the 2010s, kind of into like the big, epic smash kind of movies, as he did The Other Guys with him and Wahlberg, big action smash. Then he was the voice in Megamind, as well. I guess we can say in 2010 he started, him and Adam McKay started the whole Funny or Die whole thing. Yeah. Which is like, a real definitive thing in comedy that, he is not necessarily visibly associated with as much, but one of the, producers and all, creators of that whole thing. But as well, then he did his time in The Office. Eastbound and Down was another great, character TV series for him, a little bit more of a smaller backseat kind of role. But then Casa de Mi Parade, which was that
Casadini Padre.
Yeah, Di Padre rather, which was that crazy fucking movie in all Spanish. Yeah. Okay, then there was Anchorman 2. All right, so like we said, not as successful as Anchorman 1, but still we're talking now like over 10 years. 10 years later, that character is still relevant. Okay, then The Internship was another huge one. Then he was in both Lego movies, doing a lot of voices. Get Hard with him and Kay Hart, which I never saw, although had a lot of promise. That was in that time where Kay Hart was in everything, and I was already suffered from a little overexposure with Will Ferrell. However, Will Ferrell with cornrows on the poster, fucking like I'm disappointed at myself for not seeing it. We had Zoolander 2, so now that was 2015 for Get Hard. 2016 Zoolander 2. Right, again, not quite the smash of Zoolander 1, but Daddy's Home with like Mel Gibson and
Mark Wahlberg.
And another one with Wahlberg starring. Two of those, two Daddy's Homes, the Holmes and Watson movie,
which was a total bomb.
Total bomb, yes. Getting us to the recent days, I guess just this year even, with Downhill, which I didn't see but looks promising, with him and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. All right, so you could do worse there with the cast. And then bringing us to today's Netflix and Chat episode of Eurovision, the Story of Fire Saga 2020. So we're talking at this point 25 years from his debut on SNL, and has really been like one of the leading men in comedy, most relevant guys for the last 20 years anyway. But really, just you can't at all deny his star power. But I mean, you really just right off the bat, you have to like characters, goofy characters. He reminds me a lot of Sandler in a lot of ways, where like half of his movies are just ridiculous characters, and then half of his movies are semi-ridiculous personalities. But
I mean, in that list too, that was. There's just some things that are like a lot of the things that we've talked about too, like his cameo roles in movies, sometimes really outshines his starring role. Like the movie The Goods with Ari from Entourage, Jimmy Piven. He has a standout.
I didn't see that one, but I mean, Wedding Crashers. I didn't mention Wedding Crashers because he was unaccredited, but like killer role.
Wedding Crashers is a cameo role. There was that Interns movie with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson where he has a great cameo in.
I brought up
Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch was another cameo that he had. So like I said, actually, I should point out that those were just the big, the bigger ones where he was starring on IMDb, as well throughout the mix. Tons of TV show appearances as well, like Eastbound and Down, but he was in lots of different series as reoccurring characters that I'm sure were hilarious, but I wasn't familiar with, so I didn't mention them. But so like we said, just extremely active, and some major stuff over the last 20 years. years, as well as some defining, I mean, like I said, Anchorman's one of the biggest characters of the 2000s. Old School's one of the biggest movies of the 2000s. But like I said, you really have to over the days, he's played an elf, like a race car driver, a crazy ice skater, like a Spanish priest, an Icelandic singer. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be down, and I respect him that he's willing to get goofy and just get crazy and do these kind of, really sketch-oriented movies that'll be hits and misses, but he's willing to go at it.
He's got some of the more serious roles, too, Stranger Than Fiction, which is like his life is being narrated. Okay, yeah. More like a drama. Him and Kristen Wiig also just straight up one year just like made a real Lifetime movie. Like, it wasn't even a comedy. Like straight up.
I wish I would have got that one on my IMDb thing, because I like again, dude, he had so much shit on his IMDb that I was only just like the real ones that I knew. So we missed out. Didn't he as well? Was he part of that Andy Samberg like tennis thing a couple years ago?
He didn't do he wasn't part of the tennis thing, but what he was
he went to spring training.
He went to spring training and played all 5 like cactus leagues in like one day. Like taking helicopters, and he was getting traded from teams.
No, for sure. So I mean, he's our era's Bill Murray in some ways with that kind of shit, But
yeah,
I mean, he's just really. You might not love his movies because you have to be into goofy characters, but for me, he's one of the all-time classic. Of the 2000s, he's probably like the comedy star, and I love the guy. And again, he's still to this day, if he's on Kimmel or any talk show, I'm tuning in because you don't know what he's going to come up with. You know what I mean? So his characters might be goofy and stupid, and the movie's bad because of it, but he's still one of the all-time comedic minds and like a comedy legend of the era for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man.
But you're right. I think I do like him a little bit more, and I think I've even brought it up on past Geeked Ups that I like him a little bit more as the cameo kind of guy, or just like the Frank the Tank kind of character, as opposed to just like the utterly ridiculous, which can be swings or misses. You know what I mean? Ricky Bobby is hilarious.
Well, that's why I think Ricky Bobby is perfect as like he's a mix of both of those. You know what I mean? True. I think that's why I love that movie, because he is like just everyday guy, but also like he's this hilarious fucking NASCAR driving. Like, he's not such an over the top character as he is in like Anchorman and
and dude, even in recent years, like I said, I didn't see Get Hard. You said you gave it but I did actually see a Daddy's Home, or at least like 45 minutes of Daddy's Home one time, and I was thoroughly enjoying it. Fucking until it was like on TV. And but that was actually pretty good. So even in recent years, he's had, like you said, The Internship. He wasn't one of the leads in that one, but so he's had some better stuff recently, bringing us to Eurovision, where he's back in Sandler the Ridiculous Six form, but as crazy and wacky as ever, with both voice, costume, and character in general. Where he, of course, plays an Icelandic, a fledgling Icelandic pop star.
Ooh, baby, it's time to get geeked up.